of these really successful people. I watch these guys that were maybe a couple years older than me, engaging, eye contact, handshakes, Mr., Mrs., having their shirts tucked in.
Hey everyone, don't forget to subscribe, like, share.
So, who here, I'm going to ask a question to lead off here. Who here knows what a house is built on? Foundation, right? You think the house would be standing if you didn't build it on a foundation, you just built it on the dirt? Think it would stand, right? It wouldn't. So what we're doing here is we're trying to give you a solid base for your foundation. And I'm going to tell you a little personal story about me. And I stand before you. I'm a 50-year-old guy. I've got 2 great kids, and I've been a professional failure my whole life. And I'm thankful for those failures. The first one with me, the first major one started, and I'm going to tell you why I'm thankful for them. I was about 12 years old. Wasn't really good at anything. Was a little overweight. Middle child in an average, neighborhood, right? And I was kind of in the shadow of 2 older brothers that were really, really good at everything and really, really smart, and a little sister who was the princess of the family. So I was kind of lost. So getting into trouble, running with a bad crew around that age where you're really, kids that are really having problems are starting to emerge, right? And I was in that crew. So my father had enough of me and basically said, "You're out of the house if you don't go get a job." And I was 12, right? I'm a kid, right? I'm younger than you guys. So I decided to hop on my bike, ride 3 or 4 miles up to Springfield Country Club, and I wanted to caddy. That, being outside is something I always liked. So I decided to go up there, rode my bike, sat on the stoop, didn't know anybody. And I watched for about 4 weeks a bunch of dudes go out and caddy before me. And I never got out. I was up there 4 weeks, never made a nickel, rode my bike back and forth. And the guy's name that was the golf pro there was a legend in the golf business in Western Mass. His name was Harry Matson. And I get a little choked up thinking about Harry, but Harry was awful to me my first season there. Awful. Barely looked at me, and Harry was like this big, handsome-looking guy. If you want to see what Harry looked like, Google Steve McQueen when you get out of here. All the dads know who Steve McQueen is. Steve McQueen was the king of cool, right? So Harry was like this really, handsome guy. All the women loved him, could play golf. He was like the coolest dude I ever saw, and he wanted nothing to do with me, so he put everybody out. I kept on coming back, and I never got out. So I started emulating, again, building your crew and building your base. I was looking at the guys that were getting out ahead of me, how they dressed, how they talked, how they engaged with the members. And at a private country club, I had no experience with that. My parents were 2, working class people. We didn't have any money, right? But all of these really successful people. I watched these guys that were maybe a couple years older than me, engaging, eye contact, handshakes, Mr., Mrs., having their shirts tucked in, right? Some of the stuff, I've coached a lot of you guys. Some of the same stuff that we used to crawl up and down one side of you guys when you were young men that really made a difference to me when I was a kid. It made a difference. So I started copying these guys. All of a sudden, one morning, after about a month of doing it and copying these guys, I got a loop. Went right down the first hole, big smile, sunshine day, just like this. It was July. It took me to July to get my first caddy job. And I went out, came back the next week. All of a sudden, I wasn't the last guy to get a loop. I was like in the middle of the pack. By the end of the season, I was getting out every time, a couple of bags, and then Harry knew my name by the end of the year. Still wasn't very nice to me, but he knew my name. But again, resilience, right? To be a guy, you got to be resilient. And again, it's too bad in this world right now that it's not cool to be a man right now. There's all this other stuff going on in the world. You guys are men, right? Part of being a man is failing. You're going to have coaches that don't like you, right? Or you think they don't like you, or they're hard on you. You can't bitch and moan about it. You just got to keep on coming back. So fast forward a little bit. Over the next couple of years, I think I got fired by Harry 3 or 4 times. Every time he was having a bad day or something went wrong, get the F out. Don't come back. All right? I kept on coming back. Before I knew it, I was running the bag room for him. I was the guy assigning on my 3rd year the guys that went out caddying, and it was because of the guys that I was emulating, that crew, that base I was building, right? The resilience I showed by not quitting, right? Before I knew it, he asked me to be his assistant pro. So I was a golf pro for a few years. And he became like my second father. He became my mentor. He was a guy that once he kind of opened up his heart to me, he was in a healing process too. He was a damaged guy. He had a lot of issues too. But we kind of healed together, and he was really, really good to me the last years of his life. So I worked for him for a few years, and the biggest honor of my life to this point, besides having Andrew and Nolan, was when Harry passed away a few years ago. I did his eulogy. And, you know, he was like a second father to me. But again, I think it was through resilience and through my faith. And he was the first man that ever put faith in me. And you're going to hear a lot of guys that know their way around the Bible a lot better than me. If you guys are just starting, I'm just learning too, right? These guys can quote Bible verses. I listen to Coach O. I listen to Stevie. They can do it like the back of their hand. They know the backstory. John Harding's another guy that knows it like the back of his hand. Just pick a spot. Pick a spot. So one of the readings that I took was Psalms 145:14. The Lord upholds all who fail and lifts up all who are behold down. So when you get kicked, you got to get back up. Been kicked down a couple of other times, and it was all because of drinking when I was a younger kid. I loved to party, like Steve Miller talked about last time. There was nobody that liked to go out and rip it up at a keg party and do keg stands more than me. So when I was a senior in high school, I'd worked my way up. I was going to be the next assistant pro at Springfield Country Club, captain of the golf team, had a chance to maybe go to school and get a scholarship. I got drunk. I got drunk at the Big E. Who's been to the Big E? All right. I got thrown out of the Big E for life as a senior in high school. For life. Lost my scholarship. Almost lost my job. Fast forward, I kept on coming. Tried to clean my life up, switched the crew I was with completely, stopped hanging out with those guys. They used to pick on me for playing golf. Got rid of them. Started hanging out with a new crew, a little more responsible, a little bit older. Got my head on straight, worked down in Florida, and I failed at golf. You know, I found out that I wasn't good enough to make it down there. So the first guy that I ever caddied for heard that I had failed at being a golf pro, called me in Florida and offered me a job in the beer business. Again, building your base, coming full circle, eye contact, learning how to engage with older people, right? Went to work for him for 5 years, got a job for Coors Brewing. Fast forward again, the third guy I ever caddied for called me after 20 years in the beer business. He was the CEO of Eastern States Exposition. He said, Tim, I heard you've had enough of the beer business. How'd you like to come and be my director of sales? See how it's coming full circle, guys? And you never know where it's going to come from. So the guy that I caddied for, at the place where the guy hated me that wouldn't get me the caddy job, ends up calling me 20 years later from the place that I was thrown out of, and now I'm the guy that's basically running the show for him. So you want to have like the top of your head explode by being resilient? So again, as I take this thing home, all right, because I could go on and on. There's 100 other stories I have in my life, right? But when you think you're down, when you think somebody's picking on you, whether it's a coach, and I deal with it with my own kids. I picked on my kids all the time when I coached them. I was really hard on them. And sometimes I was probably too hard on them. And some of the guys that were around when I coached my kids, you know what, sometimes I cringe at some of the stuff I said to my kids, but it was all meant because we care. And I'm sure your dads are the same thing. Coach Sayers, I've heard him tear Zach a new one. But it's all because he cares, right? We want good for you. So when you have that down point, you think somebody's kicking you down, you got to stay resilient because you never know the reason that they're trying to keep you down. It might be something in them. You just got to keep coming. Have faith. Dig into the Bible. Remember what Psalms said right here. And listen to these guys. Pick somebody out that you can emulate. Okay? And it's who you hang with. I tell my boys all the time, look around. It's who you hang with because those are the guys, when you're going to get kicked down in life, right? When you get kicked down, there's going to be a lot of people that don't pick up the phone and call you, right? Like, hey, buddy, how you doing? Right? Crickets. I want you guys all to be one of those guys to pick up the phone, right? And it's the same guys that got you into trouble are the same guys that aren't going to call you. I know that firsthand. Don't be one of those guys. Know your crew. Be the leader. Okay? That's it for me. Thanks, guys.
Hey everyone, don't forget to subscribe, like, share.